Welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. We're once again coming live from DevCon in Amsterdam. I am joined by Caner Dolas, the CEO and co-founder of Gamma AR. We're going to talk all about augmented reality, how that applies to construction. And Caner has spent most of his career thinking about what it actually takes to get BIM-informed workflows out into the hands of field teams without adding a lot of friction to the process. How are you feeling today?
Very, very well. Thank you for the invite. As a big fan of the show, I'm happy to be here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to all the conversations we're having and maybe some inspirational things that come out of it.
Yeah, man, today's going to be a lot of fun, and I appreciate your interest in joining us today. So let's jump straight in. And I want to set a baseline for the audience just to make sure they understand what we're talking about today. Can you define augmented reality for everybody and share where you think it delivers the most value in the construction industry?
Yeah, sure. So when we're talking about augmented reality, it's at the end about adding information to reality. So in our case, we are doing this in order to, at the end, make sure that people on site can preview the work and then have a better understanding of what is about to come. That is basically what defines. And this can be then also used in order to check what is already built. And yeah, that's like let's say a short summary of that.
Yeah, it seems very straightforward. I mean, obviously the technology and the underlying tools are quite complex, but the core of it seems very straightforward as far as how it applies to construction workflows. When the topic of augmented reality comes up, what do you think people might misunderstand the most about the technology?
So what comes up very, very often in a lot of conversations actually is that people, first of all, see it as more like a checking tool, compared more with, let's say, workflows similar to open space and so on. And that is just part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
It is one part of the story, but it's not a full picture. And that's, I think, like the misunderstanding that happens a lot. Because what we are doing is, at the end, enabling people to look into the future. And that is something that, at the end, augmented reality provides as a, let's say, as a medium, as a technology. At the end, it's kind of giving, I would say, superintendents, foremen, a superpower to foresee what's about to come. And then with that, they can better steer actually what has to be built. And that is, I would say, the main misunderstanding that comes up.
I appreciate the distinction as well. And I've had the folks from Open Space on to have a similar conversation. And their tech is incredibly powerful. But to your point, it's just one aspect of this bigger mixed reality, extended reality universe that we're kind of seeing evolve in construction. And I think there's a bit of like a superpower that you give for folks who are able to leverage this tool and feel more confident in their decisions and decide more intentionally how the progress of the building is being, developed and made. So it's pretty interesting. And I'm curious, what did you see happening out in the field that made you feel like BIM data wasn't actually reaching the people who might have needed it the most?
Well, that's the interesting part. It was technologically not possible for a long, long time. So at the end, we have let's say this collected information storage that BIM models represent, right? Or at least also the processes in combination represent. And at the end, we are still printing out, let's say, drawings and bringing them to the site. And that's nothing wrong with that. Actually, that's still something very important. It works in all cases. So it's an amazing technology, also cultural technology to have this. But there is a bit of a different take that augmented reality brings in. First of all, what's great with AR as a system itself is, yes, you're able to make things very clear. That means, especially, let's say you're in a very highly installed space, you cannot represent everything very, very well with just 2D drawings.
Yeah.
That means, at the same time, you will need people on site, superintendents that are very, very experienced in order to manage it by themselves because they just know everything already. And I always admire them also. They're super, super good people. But we are also facing like a bit of a situation with like a labor shortage everywhere in the world at the moment, especially in the industry. And this is something where augmented reality can really make a difference because it makes it very simple to understand by overlaying.
And I'd love to know more about Gamma AR's mission specifically. Can you tell me more about the tool you've built and what it's like to actually use out in the field?
At the end, what we've built is let's say, solution system at the end. So what we are doing is we are taking at the end Revit models, Navisworks models, IFC models, DWG files, or sometimes in point cloud data, and taking them, for example, from Autodesk Forma and bring them to the construction site, and then helping the teams on site. That means it's either GCs or the owner apps or the subcontractors to overlay what has to be built first of all, and then understand, okay, like can we coordinate the situation a bit better? Are there any situations that we might where we might need to make changes because, for example, something has already been installed, and instead of reworking everything, we can maybe find a better solution. So there's many topics that come into that, and generally a daily life looks like this too. So you give this in the hand of the superintendents. They're walking the site. They're understanding. Okay, hey, this is where we already had some issues. Maybe we can overlay and see if there's going to be, let's say, clashes with the two different trades that are coming in at the moment. And then if there is, let's say in the drawings, because something might not have been updated, hey, let's report it. Or if something has been already wrongly installed, maybe then we can discuss a better solution and get better informed at what we should do, and then discuss it together on site. And that's also one important factor, to be able to decide on site what has to be done.
The amount of information that you're putting in people's hands is pretty impressive. I think it's interesting your team also decided to focus on iPads and mobile devices instead of using headsets and some of the more traditional virtual reality tools that you see. And I've talked to folks that are deploying those tools effectively. I'm interested to hear more. Why did you decide to go the route of tablets and iPads instead of headsets and goggles and glasses? Like, what did that conversation look like?
That's an interesting question. At the beginning, we were obviously eyeing with everything as well, but it's quite simple. At the end, everybody has phones, everybody has tablets. It's super scalable. There you go. And this makes it super easy at the end to give it into the hands of everyone. Again, at the moment, it's always about like enabling people to do something, right? So we want to make sure that we can help the most people to get at the end the superpowers. But there is more to that, because at the end, if you are using headsets, you are kind of locked in with information. It's great if you need to have two hands free. But with that, you can discuss with the other people on site, hey, what is there? And there's a feature that brings that at the end tablets and phones bring with you too, because it's about at the end communicating. You want to make sure that we both share the same perspective and kind of almost politically share the same perspective for the future. So we do the same thing.
I like that too. And I see how multiple people standing around one iPad looking at the site and talking about what they're looking at, it's a bit different, especially if you don't have enough headsets to give everybody to stand there and pop those on and make sure you're seeing and reviewing and evaluating the same circumstances. And so I can see where your barrier of entry is much lower, because it's easier to use these tools and people are very familiar with them. And I will say I'm excited about where virtual reality and some of the headset technology has gotten. The costs have come down, the usability is different, but it still is one extra tool and step in contrast to just grabbing this or the mobile phone that you might already have in your pocket. So it makes sense.
There's also the part that everybody knows how to at the end press a button. User interfaces with at the end, let's say headsets, are a bit different. Mm-hmm. So that there's more training involved. And I don't think that it's excluded, actually. It's going to happen at one point, step by step, like glasses that you put on, basically, in that way. And with that, it's going to get simpler step by step. But the technology needs to ripen to that point still. And again, at the same time, still, there is some features that those things have I can discuss with you. Yeah. So that's, yeah.
And I suppose there's a safety part of that as well, because you put a headset on and you're not really in the position to march down the middle of an active construction site. And so, this is obviously a bit different because your vision isn't going to be impaired. And granted, pass-through technology exists in all of the more modern features of virtual reality, but I think there still is a barrier there that's worth being talked about. So I appreciate you setting that differentiation there. I'd be interested to hear more about what people potentially misunderstand about augmented reality accuracy, like drift, tolerance, calibration, and how do you set customer expectations so they're using these tools correctly and within the expectations your team has?
I hear you have already some experience with that. That's perfect. It's a very good question. So at the end, it's important that we convey to our customers, this is not a total station. We are not replacing a laser scan. We're not replacing, at the end, anything that is sub-centimeter at the end. It's not about this. It's about giving qualitative previews and understanding what has to be where, maybe conceptually understanding where, let's say, some routings need to go to. So I think that's super important to make this distinction up front, because otherwise it could be at least, let's say, an expectation from customers. And we don't necessarily want them to have this expectation, obviously. But let's say in this way that we are working as a qualitative tool, not necessarily like as a precision tool, it has other values that it brings in.
I appreciate that differentiation as well. It's a lot about what your expectations are and what you're trying to get out of it. And if you're looking for down to, millimeter exactitude and trying to measure things, it doesn't seem like AR is the path that you're trying to chase. If you're trying to have that overlay and understand the scope of the building and where things are and where something might have been installed incorrectly, now you're looking at the right tool and making sure you're making the right choices accordingly. Can you share some more impactful moments or examples in, say, a superintendent's day where augmented reality is a tool worth pulling out of their pocket to help make a decision, or where it might not be the right tool as well?
There's always two areas or two times during the construction process where this matters. So basically, either, let's say, we are in a situation where there's concrete works. So that means there might be some, we are pre-pour. So there's a situation where we want to check the location of sleeves or make sure that they are right situation, right location. That's one part. And the other part can be actually also always checking openings in that area as well. Because at the end, there is going to be, these are interfaces. Things are going to go through. And that's what you need to check. And later on, and that's, I would say, even where our solution has the bigger impact, which is going to be with, all MP systems. As a classical example, and this is like very, very often the case, you have two different trades coming in, basically sanitary work is there. Then there's going to, maybe they just, because they come in early, they didn't follow or didn't see that they had to deviate with their pipes a bit. Later on, some duct work is going to go through the same area. And what we, at the end, can make sure with that is before they build up everything, they can see it, make sure, okay, I have to deviate in this area because something else is going to go through. And then I just deviate, and it's going to be good. After this moment, then people, first of all, can resolve the situation. But let's say the pipe is already there. Then, because this will happen, then it's still great, because that means then the superintendent can go, create an issue, and maybe then discuss internally, hey, can we fix this in some other way? Can we reroute this, or do we need to rework? But then it's an open discussion.
Are there any areas where augmented reality might not help or could potentially introduce some risk into the project?
Super good question. So that's again back to the expectation part, because that at the end can happen when people do not get that there is, like, it's not perfectly precise, right? Or where they think there's not going to be any drift and they don't know how to resolve it. So there is obviously methods built into also our system in order to resolve drift, either automatically or manually. But it's people that need to be aware of that. So when they're aware of that this technology exists and that this effect exists, they can resolve it. So our, let's say, task from our side is to make sure that everybody that is utilizing Gamma knows, first of all, that there is these risks, which are at the end mitigatable, but you need to be aware that you need to solve this. And at the same time, technologically, we are pushing more and more also these automatic alignment topics. And there is, I would say, a lot of simplification still to come to make sure that, for example, the models stay aligned to either the structure or to specific markers on site and so on. So there is many ways how, let's say, we are handling the situation.
What is it like when you bring this tool to folks who have never used augmented reality before? I'd be curious to hear Like, what's the big aha moment when they get it and they're excited? And what do those conversations look like when you first introduce the tool out in the field for a company?
That's always funny, actually, because most of the time this happens when we are going to the site, let's say for a demo, or maybe sometimes even for an onboarding. And what happens then is there's a bunch of people. We are basically taking out tablets, or everybody takes out their tablets as well. And then we are all aligning and then going around. It usually takes maybe not even 5 minutes to find, let's say, the first missing openings, the first missing also components, like MP components can also be the case. We have sometimes situations that we are building in areas with earthquakes, then seismic bracings are missing and so on, very commonly actually. So this can all happen. What we can do at the end is then to show this, and then the reaction is always, oh God, I haven't seen that. And I wouldn't have seen that. And then basically everybody starts to be, how can we utilize this? How can we utilize this actually as quickly as possible, because the project is running, right? So yeah.
It's cool. I mean, you're almost able to sell the tool itself just by letting them use it and walk around the project and just see for themselves how straightforward it is to implement this. And I'm excited right now about a lot of the advanced technology and construction more broadly, because for such a long time, there weren't tools built and made for the construction industry specifically. And that's changed so dramatically in the last 10 years. And I think the folks that are really ahead of the curve have a lot to be excited about as well, because we're really positively impacting the way that they get work done, the way they build, the way they mitigate rework and challenges. I think the sky's the limit, and it's just an exciting moment right now to be in construction technology. I mean, you can tell I'm a big tech nerd, obviously, because I get fired up about all these things, but I think the skeptics are starting to go by the wayside, and people are starting to understand that there's a real value in looking closer at the different tools that are available that go beyond what might be more traditional construction technology.
At the end, it comes down to, I would say, a few things, but people matter the most. So what I can just say is what we have seen throughout all of our projects. If you have supers, foremen on site that are themselves interested, it's going to stick. Mm-hmm. You need just one, actually. And then, in a project. Then what's going to happen is they will use it, other people will see, they will inspire other people to do it the same. And then it kind of moves by itself. That matters the most. That's what I would say. Then on the other side, it's also super important that the BIM VDC teams, they are not letting the site alone, because the people on site are not today most of the time used to having BIM data with them. But in order to at least set up, let's say, the integrations, in order to set up, let's say, specific views, maybe in Revit models, for example, that might be beneficial for a specific stage of the construction site, the VDC teams can do that in 5 minutes. And that's super easy for them to at least facilitate a bit more what's happening on site for different stages of the construction, in order to not have all information from all the, let's say, models always available.
Yeah.
And this is not about let's say, performance in our case. We are handling massive models, but it's more about making it easier for people to understand and also digest all the information there is.
Yeah, you're giving them the right information to make the decisions, because I could see, especially for a team that might not have used new tools, if you give them everything and they've got to go navigate the entirety of the model to find the information they need, I can see that being challenging to get that baseline adoption. And it's not about the performance, to your point, of the rendering of the model. It's making sure that they're not feeling overwhelmed by the amount of information that is available. And, of course, over time, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but over time, the team gets more tech savvy and more comfortable using the tool. You can give more information because they know how to navigate it to find out what they're trying to get and trying to understand, versus maybe the first pilot project that you bring out on site, maybe restrict that one a little bit to make sure that they're more effective with the early use case that they're bringing out.
Yeah, it's actually exactly what you are saying. So the more, let's say, usage hours people get in, the easier it's going to be to understand, okay, these models have this information, or maybe I can just easily turn off specific things, because all the functions are there. But it's, I think, for the site teams important to understand, first of all, which models do I really need for specific cases? Do I need to turn on everything at the same time or not? And this is the same for the VDC teams. Do I give the site teams like let's say an NWD with everything inside? Or maybe is it better to just give them, let's say, each of the trade models, and then they can turn on or off specifically what they need. And that depends a bit on let's say, on the project. If it's too complex, it's better to have like, I mean, it's going to be very packed, right? So it's better to have then simply each of the models. But if it's, let's say, a simple office building, yeah, bring in everything, it's fine. Then there is not many layers that you need to see through at the end.
It makes sense, and I think it's just it comes down to being very intentional on how you deploy, especially in the early stages for a company. Kind of building on that, what would you tell a general contractor or a trade partner who's curious about leveraging technology like augmented reality, but they're either skeptical or unsure of where to start? Like, what advice would you give them on day one?
Actually, I would say just contact us. It's the easiest. It's the easiest thing because at the end there's two parts to that, right? There's the technology part and the implementation part, and you need to bring in like the experience. So instead of building everything on your own from the beginning, we can just help to guide you at least in the right direction, and that's, I would say, the easiest way to get started. But in general, if you have, let's say, some tech-savvy people in your VDC team that are not scared of testing out new solutions, just give it to their hands. It's not complicated at all. You just need to know a few things and then you're good to go. I generally say everybody that is, let's say, a bit experienced with 3D models will be able to use, let's say, Gamma super easily. They can just go to the site, align the model. It's not complicated. Then there's areas where experience matters, because you might have some situations where positioning, that's going to be then let's say, you need to figure out how to do it in a specific way because of the site conditions. We can help you out there. We can just tell you how to do it correctly and then guide you in the right way. But generally, nothing complicated. It's really, because what we did is always, I mean, it's made for the site. It has to be simple, easy to use, and doesn't waste the time of people who are already very, very busy. So,
Yeah, I think that was a big reason why PlanGrid, which is my journey to Autodesk with that acquisition, was so well received by folks in the field, because it was just so easy to use. And I think that mentality for technology design and implementation is incredibly important because, to your point, the field is a crazy place sometimes. There's a lot happening. It's oftentimes very stressful. The schedules are very tight in duration. People might not feel empowered to step back and go, okay, I'm going to go learn a new technology. I mean, you should support your teams, obviously, and allow them to do that. But the easier that tool is going to be to use, the more likely it's going to be adopted and understood by the folks that are out there pounding nails, pouring concrete, and using modern and advanced technology. I mean, the scope of what happens on site has changed quite dramatically from what we would have seen 20 years ago, which is really exciting. Your company is global, of course. You've worked in all regions of the globe. When we did our kickoff call, I know you were in Japan. We're in Netherlands right now, and I'd love to hear, in your experience, what topics are universal in the conversations you have with construction leaders, whether they're GCs or owners or specialty contractors, and what topics feel a bit more regional? I'd just be interested more generally.
The questions that are very universal about the implementation of AR are mostly about positioning, I would say, because everybody has the same questions with that. And since the tools that are always used are more or less also the same across all the globe, there's maybe some specific solutions here and there, but at the end, it's kind of, everything works more or less the same. So that means the models that are coming out maybe follow then also specific standards or specific thinking. At the end, we're building all the same buildings in some ways. Yeah, the positioning part, that is one of the questions that everybody has, and that we can explain everywhere in the world in the same way. So that's fine. There is some, I would say, differences regionally, because the way some, let's say, parts are constructed is a bit different. For example, in our case, since we are aligning usually on walls or columns or grid lines, at least in the beginning, that means we are relying on them. But in specific regions, for example, in the US, there's more drywalls that are used than, for example, in Europe. And maybe they come in also then a bit of in a later time. So you have to figure out basically how to position the models at the right spot in that way. Or you have to explain, okay, the drywalls are not in yet, so maybe let's use these columns over here. So at the end, so there's most of the things are quite similar. I would say the differences come also a bit with the different project types. Because, let's say, positioning in an infrastructural situation or just checking groundworks, it's going to be, okay, take the GNSS setup and use this. Like, that's going to be the way to go. I would say it's more vertical oriented than geographically oriented. But what we can see is that also let's say, the focus is a bit different. Not totally, but always a bit different. For example, the cost of rework when you are in the US because of the drywalls, let's say for wall penetrations might not be the same as if you have a lot of, let's say, masonry work or a lot of concrete works, because then you need to drill holes and then it gets a bit more expensive. So the focus can switch there and the formula can switch. Or as you mentioned, Japan, with their, let's say, very focused process and quality culture, they built already very, very well, which leads to them having less maybe rework issues, but for them it's about like optimizing the rest of the things. Then the question for us also with our partners at the end is not only about, okay, how can we do the first steps, but how can we automatize processes that come out of the data that we provide, for example, for progress tracking and so on.
It doesn't surprise me that there's this core set of common questions that folks are asking or things that you're hearing regardless of the region, though. And I think it's very essential just to how we build. But I'm also not surprised that there's regional flair dependent on, like you said, like if you're dealing with concrete or drywall, like rework in those situations can be so dramatically different as far as the implications and total scope. So I appreciate you kind of touching on what that looks like and some of the different questions that your team might get asked. Of course, we're here in Europe today, so I've got a Europe-focused question for you as well. And I think data and compliance expectations can be quite different than what we might see in North America, for example. How do you see topics like data safety and data sovereignty influencing which tools people choose? And I'd just be curious, like your thoughts more broadly on those topics.
Europe used to always, I would say, push this topic a bit more at the beginning, especially because of GDPR and so on. But what we are seeing currently, also from requests from our customers, is at the end to have this data sovereignty thing or discussions actually from everywhere. We are seeing this across the globe. And it depends a bit also on the project types, because for some project types, it doesn't matter that much, but for others, it's really crucial. This topic is rising up. And the only way to deal with this is when we, as we are just, let's say, growing in specific regions, to adapt to that. There's no way around. And it's completely fine as well. For now, it's going to definitely go into that direction. And at the end, we built our solution also in a way that it can accommodate that very easily.
It does make sense, and I'm hearing more and more of these conversations as well, especially as legislation in different regions evolves. I mean, you mentioned GDPR, and that's obviously a big driver in a lot of that conversation coming from Europe, and the expectations are a little bit different in North America. But the questions are very understandable as far as like, where's our data? How's it being managed? Is it located in our region? Is it located elsewhere? Like, we should be talking about all of these things and making sure, compliance is adhered to, but also just making sure that folks are able to use the tools in the way that they're expecting to, based on the way the owner expects the final product to end up showing up. So I appreciate your kind of high level expectation set there too. I've got one more final question for you today. One of my favorites I always get to ask everybody: what is one tool that you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
I would say humor.
I like that answer. That gets me right in the soul.
Because in our company, that really plays a big role. We are a very humorous company, and in general, also the way that we interact with our customers is really more in a very, let's say, joyful way, and that actually at the end makes work more enjoyable, and that's our focus.
I like that answer a lot, and I actually leverage humor very heavily both at work and just my personal life. I find it makes collaborating more enjoyable. And of course, when you need to be serious, like we can be serious, it's okay. But I like trying to have as much fun as I can along the way too. It makes for a better relationship and working environment and just brings a lot of benefits. So I love that answer. It's a great one. And for everybody out there listening, of course, you are watching, hopefully, or listening to Autodesk Digital Builder podcast. Again, we are coming to you live from Amsterdam at DevCon this year. If you are listening to us on the audio version of things, you should definitely pop over and check out this episode on YouTube. We're an absolutely beautiful location, and it's worth a peek. If you got any questions for me, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Eric Thomas that works at Autodesk. And until the next time, goodbye.